I never thought a package full of cash would be the last honest thing in my life. My name is Claire, and I used to believe that keeping your head down meant staying safe. I was wrong. The day I knocked on Dominic Moretti's door wearing my courier blues and a naive smile, I didn't know I was delivering more than money. I was delivering myself. He stood in the doorway like a storm in a suit, dark eyes scanning me like I was evidence at a crime scene. When I saw what was inside that package, I ran. He caught me in 3 strides. "You saw nothing," he said, his hand on my wrist. But I had, and worse, he saw me. The girl who couldn't lie to save her life. "You're too honest for this world," he whispered, almost sad. "So now, you'll live in mine." I should have been terrified. But when he looked at me like that, like I was fragile and fierce all at once, I felt something more dangerous than fear. I felt seen. You will feel so many emotions in this mysterious love story I'm about to tell. Please support us by clicking subscribe to the channel. I never thought a package full of cash would be the last honest thing in my life. The penthouse was on Beacon Street, which should have been my first warning. Nobody orders courier delivery to Beacon Street. They have assistants for that. People whose entire job is to stand in lobbies and sign for things. But the dispatch said someone specifically requested me by employee number I, and I'd been pulling double shifts trying to make rent, so I didn't ask questions I should have asked. The elevator had mirrors on every surface. I watched myself rise, blue uniform rumpled from 8 hours of deliveries, blonde hair escaping its ponytail, storm gray eyes ringed with the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. I looked exactly like what I was. A 26-year-old woman who'd made every small, safe choice and still ended up barely surviving. The doors opened onto a private hallway. One door. Glossy black, no number, just a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. I knocked twice, professional, practiced, waited. The package in my hands was heavier than it should have been, dense, compact, wrapped in brown paper that felt expensive somehow. The door opened, and the air changed. He stood there in charcoal slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and I forgot how to do my job. Dark hair, the kind of sharp jaw that belongs in cologne ads. But it was his eyes that stopped me. Brown so deep they looked black, focused on me with an intensity that felt like being X-rayed. He wasn't just looking, he was cataloging, assessing. Claire Mitchell. My name in his mouth made my pulse skip. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and held out the scanner. He signed with efficient movements, and I noticed his hands, broad, scarred knuckles, a signet ring on his right hand that caught the light. My mother always said you could tell everything about a man from his hands. These hands had built something, or broken something, probably both. "Package for signature," I managed, my customer service voice thinner than usual. He took it from me without breaking eye contact. And for a moment we stood there in that space between transaction and something else. Then he turned away, walking into the penthouse. And I should have left. Should have pressed the elevator button and counted my tip and forgotten the way his presence felt like weather. The pressure drop before a storm. But I didn't leave. Because he left the door open. I told myself I was just making sure he didn't need anything else. That's what I told myself as I took 3 steps into the entryway, into a space of marble floors and art that probably cost more than my entire life. He was at a glass table near the window, Boston sprawling beneath him like a kingdom, and he'd set the package down unopened. "You can go," he said without turning around. His voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of calm that comes from never having to raise your voice to be heard. I should have. God, I should have. But something in his tone felt wrong, not threatening, but resigned. Like he was used to people leaving. And I was tired of leaving, tired of being invisible, tired of playing it safe in a life that felt like slow suffocation. "Do you need me to wait for a return?" I asked. He turned then, and I saw something flicker across his face. Surprise, maybe, or curiosity. "No returns," he said. Then, after a pause, "What's your real question?" The directness of it disarmed me. I swallowed, felt heat rise to my cheeks. "Nothing. I'm sorry, I should." The package tore. I don't know how it happened. Maybe I bumped the table as I turned to leave. Maybe the wrapping was already compromised. But suddenly, brown paper split and the contents spilled across the glass. Stacks of bills, hundreds, bound with paper bands, crisp and organized and absolutely, definitively illegal. I froze. My body knew to run before my brain caught up. And I was backing toward the door when he moved. Not rushed, not aggressive, just suddenly there between me and the exit. His hand raised in a gesture that was almost gentle. Wait, I didn't see anything, I said too quickly, the lie obvious and desperate in my mouth. I'm nobody. I won't. Stop. One word, but it landed like a hand on my shoulder. I stopped, looked up at him because there was nowhere else to look, and what I saw wasn't anger. It was something worse. Calculation. He was deciding something about me, and I had no idea what. He stepped closer. I smelled cedar and something darker, something expensive and vaguely dangerous. His eyes moved over my face, my trembling lips, my two wide eyes, the way I was trying so hard not to shake. You're a terrible liar, he said softly. It wasn't a criticism. It sounded almost like sympathy. I can learn, I whispered, which was the wrong thing to say, the most honest thing I'd ever said. Something changed in his expression. He reached out slowly, deliberately, giving me time to flinch away. When I didn't, his hand touched my chin, tilting my face up toward the light. His thumb brushed my jawline, and I felt that touch everywhere. You're too honest for this world, he said, and there was something sad in it, something final. So now, you'll live in mine. I should have been terrified, should have screamed, should have run, should have done any of the things survival instinct demands. But when he looked at me like that, like I was something rare and breakable and worth keeping, I felt something more dangerous than fear. I felt seen. My driver will take you home, he said, stepping back, giving me space I suddenly didn't want. You're free to go. I don't need a driver. It wasn't a request. The words should have sounded like a threat. Instead, they sounded like a promise. He moved to a phone on the wall, pressed a button, spoke in low tones I couldn't hear. I stood there in his entryway with my courier bag and my minimum wage and my suddenly useless independence, and I knew the way you know about car crashes before impact, that everything had just changed. What's your name? I asked as he walked me to the elevator. He smiled for the first time, and it was somehow worse than his intensity. Worse because it was real. Dominic, he said. Dominic Moretti. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside, turned to face him as the doors began to close, and in that shrinking space between us, he said one more thing. Don't be afraid, Claire. I only hurt people who lie to me. The doors closed. I rode down 40 floors with my heart trying to escape my chest, my hands shaking, my whole body aware of the place where his thumb had touched my skin. When I got home, I locked every lock and checked them twice and lay awake until dawn. The envelope appeared under my door at sunrise. I knew what it was before I opened it. Cash, exactly my monthly rent, and a note in handwriting that looked like it belonged in a museum. Consider this a retainer. You work for me now. D. M. I sat on my kitchen floor holding that note until my coffee went cold, until the morning light turned gold, until I admitted to myself what I'd known since the moment he looked at me. I was already his. I tried to return the money for 3 days. The first day, I told myself it was a mistake, some rich man's weird power play that would blow over if I ignored it. I went to work, delivered packages, smiled at customers, and pretended my hands weren't shaking every time I saw a black car. The second day, I called the number on the card. It rang once before a woman answered. Professional, warm, utterly unsurprised to hear from me. Mr. Moretti's office. I hung up, stared at my phone like it had betrayed me. The third day, I went back. The restaurant wasn't on Beacon Street. It was in the North End, tucked between a bakery and a shop selling imported olive oil, the kind of place you'd walk past 100 times without noticing. No sign, just a red door with a brass handle worn smooth by decades of hands. I stood outside for 10 minutes, the envelope with Dominic's money burning in my bag, before I finally pushed it open. Inside was dim and smelled like garlic and old wood and red wine. Empty tables, white cloths, chairs stacked. A woman stood behind the bar polishing glasses. Late 40s, dark hair pulled back, the kind of elegant that comes from knowing exactly who you are. She looked up when I entered, and her expression shifted into something I couldn't read. You must be Claire, she said. Not a question, I need to see Dominic Moretti. I know. She set down the glass, gestured toward a door at the back. He expected you yesterday. The presumption of it should have made me angry. Instead, it made me feel transparent, like everyone could see how this would unfold except me. I followed her through the kitchen, stainless steel and prep tables, a cook chopping vegetables who didn't look up, to a narrow hallway. Another door, this one unmarked. She knocked twice, opened it without waiting for an answer. She's here, the woman said, and I caught the smallest smile before she left me standing in the doorway. The office was nothing like the penthouse, small, crowded with filing cabinets and bookshelves, a desk covered in papers and a laptop. Dominic sat behind it in a black t-shirt, sleeves pushed up, and for a moment he looked almost ordinary. Almost. Then he stood, and the air shifted the way it had in his entryway, that sense of contained power, of everything held in careful check. Claire. My name again. I wondered if he practiced saying it, or if it just naturally sounded like that in his mouth, intimate and formal at once. I can't accept this. I pulled the envelope from my bag, set it on his desk with more force than necessary. Whatever you think I saw, whatever you think this is, sit down. I don't want to sit down. I want my life back. He moved around the desk, not toward me but to the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the alley below. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than I expected. Your life. Tell me about it. The question caught me off guard. What? Your life. The one you want back. What does it look like? I should have told him to go to hell. Should have turned and walked out. But something in the way he asked, like he genuinely wanted to know, like my answer mattered, made me honest. I wake up at 5, work until 8, sometimes 9, come home to an apartment where the heat doesn't work half the time, and my neighbor plays guitar through the walls until midnight. I eat dinner standing over the sink. I fall asleep watching shows I don't care about because the silence is worse. I thought about it, swallowed. It's not much, but it's mine. He turned from the window, and the look on his face was something I couldn't name. And you think that's freedom? It's all I have. No. He stepped closer, and I felt my spine straighten involuntarily. It's all you've settled for. The words landed like an accusation, and I felt heat rise to my face, shame and anger tangled together. You don't know anything about me. I know you work 2 jobs and still can't make rent. I know you apologize when other people bump into you. I know you saw enough money on that table to change your life, and your first instinct was to run away from it. His eyes held mine. I know you came back here to return money you desperately need because you can't stand the idea of owing someone, especially someone like me. I hated how right he was. Hated how exposed I felt standing in his cramped office with my worn-out coat and my pride in tatters. So what do you want from me? Nothing you're thinking. He moved back to his desk, pulled out his phone, and slid it across to me. Look, I didn't want to, but I picked it up, and my stomach dropped. Photos. Me walking to work. Me leaving my building. Me at the coffee shop on the corner where I got breakfast every Tuesday because they had a deal on muffins. Timestamps. Dates. 7 days worth of surveillance. I don't understand, I whispered. You were flagged the moment you walked into my building. His voice was matter-of-fact, like he was explaining weather patterns. My enemies assume everyone who enters is on my payroll. You delivered a package to me, which means you're useful. Or a liability. But I'm not. I don't know anything about... It doesn't matter what you know. It matters what they think you know. The room tilted. I sat down without meaning to, the phone still in my shaking hands. Who are they? People who want to hurt me. And now they think you're a way to do it. I looked up at him, and for the first time since I'd walked into that penthouse, I felt real fear. Not of him, but of the world he'd just revealed. The web I'd stumbled into without knowing there was a spider. What am I supposed to do? Let me protect you. I don't want protection. I want to disappear. You can't. He sat on the edge of his desk, close enough that I could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes. The shadow of exhaustion he hid well. Not anymore. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with numb fingers, saw the unknown number, nearly dismissed it. Then I opened the message. A photo. My sister Emma, leaving her high school in Cambridge, backpack over one shoulder, laughing at something her friend said. Blonde hair like mine, Braces she'd gotten last year. 16 years old and the only family I had left. The caption was simple. Pretty girl. Be a shame if something happened. The phone slipped from my hands. Dominic caught it before it hit the floor, looked at the screen, and I watched his jaw tighten. The only visible sign of anger, but it was enough. Enough to know that whoever sent that message had just made a terrible mistake. When was this taken? His voice was steel wrapped in silk. I don't know, I couldn't breathe. Today, maybe. She goes to Cambridge Latin. I need to... I was already standing, already moving toward the door, but his hand on my arm stopped me. Not rough, not controlling, just firm enough to keep me present. I have 2 people on her right now. She's safe. You don't know that. I do. Look at me, Claire. I couldn't. If I looked at him, if I let him see the tears burning behind my eyes, I would shatter. Look at me. I did. And what I saw wasn't the man from the penthouse or the crime boss from the newspapers I'd started reading obsessively. I saw someone who understood exactly what it felt like to have the people you love used as weapons against you. I will keep her safe, he said, and you, but you have to trust me. I don't know you. I know. His thumb brushed the inside of my wrist. Just once. So quick I might have imagined it. But you don't have a choice. He was right. I hated that he was right. I hated that my sister's safety depended on a man I'd met 4 days ago. I hated that some part of me, some small, traitorous part, felt safer in his office than I had in my own apartment for weeks. What do I have to do? For now, go home, pack a bag. Lucia will drive you. Where am I going? Somewhere they can't find you. He stood, walked to the door, opened it. Lucia was already there, keys in hand, looking unsurprised. Emma will be at the same location by tonight. You'll stay together until this is handled. And then? Then you decide. His eyes held mine. Stay in my world or go back to yours. But either way, you'll be alive to make the choice. Lucia touched my elbow gently, and I let her guide me out. Through the kitchen, through the restaurant, into a car with tinted windows and leather seats that smelled new. I should have asked more questions. Should have demanded answers. Proof. Something. But all I could think about was Emma's face in that photo, and the way Dominic had said I will keep her safe like it was an oath. The car pulled away from the curb. I watched the north end blur past, felt my old life receding like shoreline, and pulled out my phone to call Emma. It rang twice before she answered, breathless. Claire? Where are you? There are these guys outside my school, and they said you sent them, but I didn't know if... Listen to me. I need you to trust me, okay? Go with them. I'll explain everything tonight. You're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry, but I need you to do this. A pause, then, quietly. Okay. The call ended. I closed my eyes, leaned my head against the window, and tried to tell myself I'd done the right thing, that I hadn't just signed away every shred of independence I'd fought so hard to build. My phone buzzed again. Not unknown this time. Dominic, you were chosen as a message. To me. I stared at the words until they blurred, until Lucia pulled up to my apartment and I realized I was shaking. Not from fear anymore. From fury. The safe house was a brownstone in Brookline that looked like every other brownstone on the block, which, I supposed, was the point. Emma and I shared a room on the second floor with 2 twin beds and a window that overlooked a garden someone had loved once before the weeds took over. We didn't talk much that first night. What could I say? Sorry I got us kidnapped by the Mafia because I can't mind my own business. She fell asleep with her phone clutched to her chest, and I sat by the window watching headlights pass, wondering which ones were watching us and which ones were just people going home. Lucia brought us breakfast in the morning. Real breakfast. Eggs and toast and coffee that didn't taste like burnt water. She was kind in that efficient way some women perfect, the kind that makes you feel cared for without being smothered. How long do we have to stay here? Emma asked, picking at her eggs. Until it's safe, Lucia said simply. And when's that? Lucia's eyes found mine over Emma's head. Her expression said what her words didn't. That depends on your sister. The days blurred. Emma did homework at the kitchen table while I paced, checked my phone obsessively, and tried not to feel like a prisoner in a place designed for my protection. Dominic texted once a day, always brief, always at odd hours. You're safe. Emma's school has extra security. The situation is being handled. Never anything personal. Never anything that acknowledged the way his hand had felt on my wrist or the way I couldn't stop thinking about it. On the fourth night, Lucia told me to get dressed. Not a request. "Where are we going?" "Mr. Moretti needs to see you." "Why?" He didn't say. Something in her tone made me not ask again. I wore jeans and the one nice sweater I'd packed, pulled my hair into something less desperate than a ponytail. Emma was already asleep, and I kissed her forehead before I left, breathing in her shampoo, coconut and vanilla, the same brand since she was 12. "She'll be fine," Lucia said softly. "Marco's here." Marco was the silent driver, the one who'd followed me for days before all this. Seeing him now felt almost comforting, which probably meant I was losing my grip on normal. The car ride took 30 minutes. I watched Boston pass, Brookline to Cambridge to somewhere industrial, warehouses and chain-link fences and sodium lights making everything look jaundiced. We pulled into a lot behind a building with no signs, no indicators of what happened inside. Just concrete and shadows and men in dark coats smoking cigarettes who nodded at Lucia like they knew her. "Stay close," she said. We went in through a side door. The interior was exactly what you'd expect. Exposed brick, dim lighting, the smell of oil, and something metallic I tried not to identify. Voices echoed from somewhere deeper in the building, and I followed Lucia through a maze of hallways until we reached a door with light spilling underneath. She knocked. Opened it. Dominic stood at a table covered in papers and photographs, his shirt sleeves rolled up, tie gone, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. 3 other men stood with him, older, harder, the kind who looked at me and saw inventory, not a person. But when Dominic looked up and saw me, something shifted in his face. Relief, maybe, or something more complicated. "Give us the room," he said. The men filed out without question. Lucia squeezed my shoulder once before she left. And then it was just us, me and him, and the table between us covered in what looked like crime scene photos. "You didn't have to come," he said. Lucia didn't make it sound optional. Nothing with me is optional, but I try to give people choices when I can. I moved closer to the table, looked at the photos before I could stop myself. Buildings, license plates, a man's face in profile, blurry but distinct enough to make my stomach turn. I'd seen that face before, in my nightmares, in restraining order paperwork. "Vincent," I whispered. "You know him." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "He's my ex." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Dominic's hands flattened on the table, and when he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "Tell me." So I did, not because he demanded it, but because holding it inside suddenly felt more dangerous than the truth. I told him about meeting Vincent 3 years ago, charming, successful, the kind of guy who made you feel special just by choosing you. I told him about the first time he grabbed my arm too hard, the first time he showed up at my work unannounced, the first time I realized special was just another word for owned. I told him about the restraining order, the move across the city, the new phone number, the constant looking over my shoulder until I'd almost convinced myself I was safe. Dominic listened without interrupting, his jaw tight, his eyes never leaving my face. "He found you," he said when I finished. "I don't know. Maybe." I moved to the window, wrapped my arms around myself. Or maybe I just have terrible luck. It's not luck. He was behind me suddenly, close enough that I felt his presence like heat. Vincent Drake isn't finance. He's a fixer, launders money for people who make me look like a saint. He uses clean people as cover, people with access, with routes, with records that don't raise flags. The implication hit me like cold water. He used me. Yes, my courier routes, my apartment, my... God, everything. I felt sick, felt stupid, felt like every choice I'd made for the past 3 years had been part of someone else's plan, and I'd been too blind to see it. "Claire." Dominic's hand touched my shoulder, and I flinched. He pulled back immediately. "Look at me." I couldn't. If I looked at him, I'd fall apart, and I was so tired of falling apart. "This isn't your fault." I let him in. "I stayed when I should have left. You survived." His voice was firm, almost angry. "You got out. You protected yourself and your sister. That's not weakness. That's..." He paused. And when he spoke again, his voice was softer. "That's everything." I turned then, because I couldn't not look at him after that. His face was closer than I expected, and I saw things I hadn't noticed before. The scar above his left eyebrow, the exhaustion in his eyes, the way he looked at me like I was something that needed protecting, but also something that could break him. "He's coming for both of us, isn't he?" I said. "Yes. Why? Because you're my weakness now, and he's smart enough to know it." The words hung between us, dangerous and true. I should have been scared, should have run. But all I felt was the terrible clarity of understanding. This was always going to happen. The moment I walked into that penthouse, the moment I saw that money, the moment Dominic looked at me and decided I was worth protecting, this became inevitable. "What do we do?" I asked. "We end it. Before he gets to Emma. Before he gets to you." "How?" He moved back to the table, pulled out a photograph I hadn't noticed. Vincent walking into a building downtown, briefcase in hand, looking every inch the successful businessman he pretended to be. "He's moving product tomorrow night. $500,000 in bearer bonds through a shell corporation. If we intercept it, we cut his lifeline. Without money, he's just a violent ex with a restraining order. With money, he's connected. Protected. You want to rob him. I want to dismantle him. There's a difference." I stared at the photo, at Vincent's face, and felt something shift inside me. Not fear anymore, but something colder, harder. "I want to help." "No." He used me. He threatened my sister. "I'm not just going to hide in Brookline while you—" "Claire." He was in front of me again, hands on my shoulders, and this time I didn't flinch. "This is what I do. You don't need to. I know what he looks like now. I know his patterns, his tells, the way he moves when he's lying." I cut him off, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I can help. You could get hurt. I'm already hurt." We stood there, inches apart, and I watched him decide, watched him weigh my safety against my agency, protection against respect. When he finally nodded, it felt like a victory and a surrender all at once. "Tomorrow night. The docks. You stay in the car with Lucia, unless I say otherwise. Deal." His hands were still on my shoulders. His thumbs brushed the hollow of my collarbones, just once, and I felt that touch everywhere, in my pulse, in my breath, in the space between who I was and who I was becoming. "I won't let him hurt you again," he said. "I know, and I did. God help me, I did." The ride back to Brookline was quiet. Lucia didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer answers. Emma was still asleep when I slipped back into our room, and I sat by the window watching the garden until dawn, thinking about Vincent and Dominic, and the way protection could feel like both a cage and a choice. My phone buzzed at sunrise. A photo, sent from an unknown number. Me. Leaving the warehouse last night. Clear as day. Standing next to Dominic's car. The caption made my blood freeze. "She's prettier up close." The photo changed everything and nothing at all. I showed it to Dominic in his office the next morning, my hand steady even though my insides were turning liquid. He took the phone without a word, studied it with the focused intensity of a surgeon examining an X-ray, then set it down on his desk with deliberate care. The kind of care that meant he wanted to throw it through the window but wouldn't because control was his religion. "He's watching the warehouse," I said. "He's always watching. That's what he does." Dominic leaned back in his chair, and I saw the calculation happening behind his eyes, variables shifting, risks being weighed. The question is why he's showing his hand now. To scare me. To provoke me. The distinction mattered. I was learning that with Dominic. Everything was strategy. Every word chosen, every gesture measured. But there were moments, like now, when something else flickered beneath the surface. Something raw that he couldn't quite control. "The meeting tonight," I started, "is canceled." "What?" "No, you said—" That was before he proved he has eyes on my operations. He stood, moved to the window overlooking the alley, hands in his pockets. "Before he made it clear he's willing to hurt you to get to me." The protectiveness in his voice should have made me feel safe. Instead, it made me angry. The kind of anger that comes from being sidelined, from watching men make decisions about your life like you're not in the room. So what? I just hide forever. I moved closer, felt my hands curl into fists. "Let him control my life because you're afraid of what he might do." I'm not afraid. He turned, and the look on his face was something I'd never seen before. Not quite anger, not quite fear, but something that lived in the space between. I'm realistic. Vincent wants to hurt you because he knows it destroys me. And I won't give him that satisfaction. The words landed like a confession he hadn't meant to make. We stood there in the morning light streaming through his office window, and I realized we were having two conversations at once, the one about Vincent and the one about us, about what I'd become to him in less than 2 weeks, about what he was becoming to me. You can't protect me from everything, I said quietly. I can try. That's not protection. That's prison. His jaw tightened. For a long moment, he just looked at me. Really looked. The way he had that first day in his penthouse, like he was cataloging every detail to memory. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. Come here. I should have held my ground, maintained the distance that kept this professional, transactional, safe, but I moved toward him anyway, drawn by something I didn't want to name. And when I was close enough to feel the heat coming off him, he spoke again. I have 3 rules, he said. For people in my life, people who matter. I'm not in your life. I'm a complication you inherited. Claire, my name again. And this time it sounded like an argument. Rule 1. You don't leave the city without telling me where you're going. Not because I'm controlling you, but because I need to know how to find you if something goes wrong. I opened my mouth to protest, but he continued. Rule 2. You don't lie to me about anything, not to protect yourself, not to protect me, not because you think the truth will hurt. I can handle hurt. I can't handle being blindsided. His hand came up slowly, carefully, and his fingers brushed my cheek, so light I might have imagined it, except I felt it in my bones. Rule 3. You don't put yourself in danger to prove a point. Not to me, not to Vincent, not to yourself. Your safety isn't negotiable. The rules hung in the air between us, and I understood what he was really saying, that I mattered, that this was real, that somewhere between the package delivery and the warehouse surveillance we'd crossed a line neither of us could uncross. Those are your rules, I said, my voice shakier than I wanted. What about mine? Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe respect. What do you want? I thought about every man who'd made me smaller, every time I'd swallowed my voice, every moment I'd chosen peace over truth, thought about Vincent and his charming manipulation, about my father who left when I was 12, about every boss who'd underpaid me and every landlord who'd ignored my calls, thought about being invisible, being useful, being everything except myself. You don't lie to me either, I said. Not about the danger, not about what you do, not about what this is. I gestured between us, at the space that felt charged and fragile. If I'm in your world, I need to see it clearly. All of it. His hand was still near my face, and now it cupped my jaw. Warm, calloused, steady. Deal. And one more thing. I felt my courage building, fed by his nearness and my anger and the terrible clarity of knowing I'd already made my choice. When this is over, when Vincent's gone, you don't get to decide I'm safer without you. I get to decide that. His thumb brushed my lower lip, and I watched his expression shift into something that looked almost like pain. What if I can't give you normal? I never asked for normal. I asked for truth. We stood there in his cramped office with the morning traffic building outside and his hand on my face and everything I'd ever known about safety crumbling around us. Then he kissed me. Not rushed, not desperate, deliberate, like he'd been thinking about it, planning it, holding himself back until the exact right moment. His lips were warm and firm and tasted like coffee and something darker, and when I kissed him back, I felt every wall I'd built come down at once. His other hand found my waist, pulled me closer, and I let him. Let myself want this. Want him. Want something more than survival. When we pulled apart, I was shaking. So was he. That can't happen again, he said, but his hand was still on my waist. Why not? Because I can't think clearly when you're this close. Good. I smiled despite everything. I'm tired of clear thinking. He laughed. Actual laughter. Brief and surprised and real. And I realized I'd never heard him laugh before. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less guarded, Made him look like someone who could have a normal life if he chose differently. "You're dangerous, Claire Mitchell," says the Mafia boss. Allegedly. His smile faded. "The meeting tonight is still canceled, but tomorrow we do this my way. Controlled, planned, and you stay with Lucia. Fine. Fine? I trust you." The words came out easier than I expected. I don't trust Vincent. I don't trust whatever game he's playing. But I trust you. Something crossed his face. Gratitude, maybe, or something heavier. He pulled away, put professional distance between us, but his eyes stayed on mine. "There's something you need to see," he said, moving to his desk. He opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, handed it to me. "This came this morning." I opened it. Inside were surveillance photos. Not of me, not of Emma, of Dominic, leaving his penthouse, entering the restaurant, walking through the North End. Dozens of them, spanning weeks. And on each one, written in red marker like a threat or a promise, was the same word: mine. My hands went cold. "Vincent's been following you." "Not Vincent." Dominic's voice was tight. "These were taken by someone in my organization, someone close enough to track my movements without raising suspicion. You have a traitor. I have a problem." He took the folder back, closed it. "Vincent doesn't work alone. He's too smart for that. He finds the cracks in organizations and exploits them. Which means someone I trust has been feeding him information. About me. About everything. The implications spread like poison. If someone inside Dominic's world was working with Vincent, then the safe house wasn't safe. The protection wasn't protection. Every move we made was being reported, analyzed, used against us. "Emma," I breathed, "is being moved. Now. Different location, different guards. People I've known since I was 18. He was already texting, his fingers flying across the screen. "You'll join her tonight. And you?" I find the leak. And I plug it. The coldness in his voice reminded me who he was, what he was capable of. This wasn't the man who'd kissed me minutes ago. This was the one who'd built an empire on fear and loyalty, who dealt with betrayal the way other people dealt with business expenses. Dominic. He looked up, and I saw the war happening behind his eyes. The part of him that wanted to shield me from this, and the part that knew I'd already chosen to see it clearly. "Don't ask me not to do what needs to be done," he said quietly. "I'm not." I moved closer again, took his hand. "I'm asking you to come back when it's over." His fingers tightened around mine, once, hard, like he was holding on to something he couldn't afford to lose. Then he let go, stepped back, became business again. "Lucia's waiting downstairs. Go." I went to the door, stopped with my hand on the knob. "What's his name?" "Whose?" "The traitor. You already know, don't you?" The silence stretched. Then, so quietly I almost missed it. "Vincent Drake, and he's coming for both of us." I walked out into the hallway where Lucia stood with her kind eyes and her concealed weapon. And I realized Dominic hadn't answered my question at all. He'd redirected it, protected me from knowledge that could hurt me, kept his secrets even while promising truth. In the car, Lucia handed me a phone I'd never seen before. New number, encrypted. Only 3 people have it. Let me guess. You, Dominic, and Marco. She smiled faintly. Smart girl. My old phone buzzed in my pocket. One last message from my old life, from the number that had been sending threats. I opened it against my better judgment. A photo. Not of me this time. Of Dominic's office window, taken from the building across the street. Clear view into the room where we'd just been standing, where we'd kissed, where I'd agreed to trust him with everything. The caption was 3 words that made my blood freeze and my hands curl into fists. "He can't save you." I looked at Lucia, at this woman who'd been nothing but kind while carrying enough danger to protect us both, and I made a decision. "I need you to teach me something," I said. "What?" "How to fight back." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded once, sharp, approving. "Tomorrow." 6 a.m. Why tomorrow? Because tonight, Vincent Drake is going to learn what happens when you threaten a Moretti. Her smile was sharp as a blade. "And you're going to watch." The new safe house was in Newton, a Tudor-style home behind iron gates with security cameras hidden in the eaves like watchful eyes. Emma was already there when I arrived, doing calculus homework at a kitchen island that probably cost more than our entire apartment. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw the question in her eyes before she asked it. How bad is it? I set my bag down, pulled out the chair next to her, and for the first time since this started, I told her the truth. Not all of it. Not the kiss. Not the way my hands still remembered the feel of Dominic's jaw. Not the part where I'd chosen this world knowing it might destroy us both. But enough. Enough that she understood Vincent wasn't just my ex. He was the reason we were here. She listened without interrupting, her pencil still in her hand, and when I finished, she was quiet for so long I thought maybe I'd scared her too badly. Then she reached over and took my hand. I always hated him, she said simply. Even when you pretended everything was fine. I knew. The words cracked something open in my chest. All those months I'd hidden the bruises, made excuses for canceled plans, smiled through the fear. She'd seen through every lie. 16 years old, and she'd known what I couldn't admit to myself. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't. She squeezed my hand. You got us out. That's what matters. But I hadn't gotten us out. Not really. I just led us into a different kind of danger. One wrapped in expensive suits and encrypted phones and men who solved problems with violence disguised as protection. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in the guest room listening to Emma's breathing through the wall and thought about Vincent. About the first time I saw him, a coffee shop in Back Bay, him in a perfect suit reading the Financial Times, me in my courier uniform on my 15-minute break. He'd smiled at me like I was the most interesting thing in the room. Asked about my day like he actually cared. I'd felt special, chosen, seen. The memory made me sick now. Not because it was a lie, but because it was the same thing I felt with Dominic. That dangerous, addictive feeling of mattering to someone powerful. What if I was just making the same mistake in a different costume? What if the only difference between Vincent and Dominic was that one hit me and the other just hadn't yet? My phone, the new encrypted one, buzzed at 2 a.m. Dominic? Can't sleep either. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. How do you know I'm awake? Security cameras. I looked up at the corner of the room and saw it. A small lens, barely visible. I should have been angry. Should have felt violated. Instead, I felt something else. Something that scared me more than surveillance. I felt less alone. That's creepy, I typed. I know. I'm working on being less protective. It's not going well. Despite everything, I smiled. Find your traitor. The response took longer this time. Tomorrow. There's something you need to know first. About Vincent. About why he chose you. My stomach dropped. Tell me now. Not over text. Tomorrow. After the meeting. I need you to understand the full picture before I end this. I wanted to demand answers. Wanted to break every rule about patience and waiting and trusting the process. But something in his words stopped me. The weight of them. The way end this sounded less like resolution and more like finality. Dominic? Yes? Come back safe? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally. I promise. I lay awake until dawn, holding my phone like a talisman, and when the sun finally came up, I was already dressed. Lucia found me in the kitchen at 5:30, drinking coffee that tasted like ashes. Ready? She asked. For what? I told you. 6 a.m. You wanted to learn how to fight back. I'd forgotten. Or maybe I'd hoped she'd forget. But Lucia led me down to a basement I hadn't known existed, converted into a gym with mats and a heavy bag and mirrors on every wall. She handed me a pair of gloves. First lesson, she said. Fear is good. It keeps you sharp. But panic gets you killed. For the next hour, she taught me things I never wanted to need. How to break a grip. Where to hit to cause maximum damage. How to run in heels if necessary. Though she added that the best defense was never wearing heels in the first place. She was patient, methodical, and when I finally landed a solid hit on the bag, she smiled. Good. Again. Why are you helping me? I asked between breaths. She adjusted my stance, her hands professional but not unkind. Because Dominic cares about you. And I've known him since he was 23 years old trying to clean up his father's mess. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. How does he look at me? Like you're the first honest thing in his life. She stepped back, gestured for me to hit again. And like you scare him more than any enemy ever has. I hit the bag hard enough that my knuckles sang with pain. And I thought about fear and honesty and the way Dominic had said I can't think clearly when you're this close. Thought about Vincent and his charming lies, about my father who'd chosen absence over difficulty, about every man who'd made me feel like my truth was too much or not enough. Dominic was afraid of me, of what I made him feel. But he stayed anyway. That meant something. Had to mean something. The day crawled forward with agonizing slowness. Emma studied. I paced. Lucia made phone calls in Italian that sounded beautiful and threatening at once. Marco stood by the front door like a statue, and I wondered if he ever slept or if loyalty had turned him into something beyond human. At 4 p.m., my phone buzzed. Not Dominic this time. An unknown number. I almost didn't open it. Almost deleted it. But something made me click. A video file. 30 seconds long. My hand shook as I pressed play Vincent in what looked like a hotel room. Expensive, but generic. He was talking to someone off camera. His face animated the way it used to get when he was planning something. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read his lips. I'd spent 2 years watching his mouth, learning to predict his moods by the shape of his smile. She doesn't know, he was saying. She still thinks it was random. The camera panned. My breath stopped. Me. On screen, grainy surveillance footage from 3 years ago, leaving my old apartment building. Vincent's apartment building. The timestamp showed a date I remembered, the night I'd finally worked up the courage to leave, my bag packed, my hands shaking, my resolve as fragile as glass. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what came next in the video. Vincent, turning to face the camera directly, smiling that smile I used to find charming. Tell Moretti I've been planning this for years. She was always the insurance policy. I just had to wait for the right moment to cash in. The video ended. I sat there in the Newton safe house with my sister upstairs and my hands covered in boxing tape, and my whole world tilting on its axis, understanding finally, what Dominic had been trying to tell me. Vincent hadn't found me by accident. He'd chosen me deliberately, 3 years ago, maybe longer. Chosen me because I was clean, because I had courier access, because I was naive enough to trust him and desperate enough for love to ignore the warning signs. But why? What made me valuable enough to plan for years? The answer hit me like a fist. Dominic. Vincent had been watching Dominic, studying his patterns, looking for weaknesses. And somehow, he'd known that if he put me in Dominic's path, something would happen. That Dominic would see me the way he saw me. That I would become leverage before I even knew what game I was playing. I'd been a weapon aimed at Dominic's heart before I ever knocked on his door. My phone rang. Dominic. Finally. Did you see it? His voice was tight. The video? Yes. Claire, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Vincent isn't just after money or territory. He's after me, specifically. And he's been using you to get to me since before we met. I know. My voice sounded hollow. I just figured it out. There's more. Vincent worked for my father. Years ago, before you and I ever crossed paths. My father fired him for stealing, and Vincent has been waiting for revenge ever since. When my father died and I took over, he started planning this. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. He researched you, found your patterns, knew you used that courier service. So he got close to me, got access to my roots, and waited. Until you delivered to me, yes. Dominic's voice cracked slightly. Claire, this isn't your fault. You couldn't have known. But I did know. Some part of me had always known that Vincent's attention felt too deliberate, too focused. I'd just been too lonely to care. Where is he now? I asked. We're handling it. That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give you right now. Stay with Lucia. Stay with Emma. I'll call you when it's done. Dominic, wait. I need you to promise me something. What? If this goes wrong, if something happens to me, you take Emma and you run. Lucia knows where. There's money, papers, everything you need. You start over. Nothing's going to happen to you, I said, but my voice betrayed me. Promise me, Claire. I thought about rules and promises and the way his hand had felt on my face that morning in his office. Thought about Vincent and his long game, about being a chess piece moved by hands I never saw. I promise, I whispered. But you promise me something too. Anything. You end this. Not just for you. Not just for your revenge. For me. For Emma. For everyone he's hurt. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, I will. And Claire? Yeah. I'm sorry. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, and Lucia appeared in the doorway like she'd been summoned by my fear. Her face told me she already knew. He's going after Vincent tonight, I said. Yes. Alone? He's never alone. But yes, in the ways that matter. I looked down at my hands, still wrapped in boxing tape, and made a decision that would have terrified the version of me from 2 weeks ago. The version who delivered packages and kept her head down and believed safety meant staying small. I want to see it, I told Lucia. Not participate, not interfere. But I want to watch how this ends, Dominic said. I know what Dominic said. But Vincent has been watching me for 3 years. I think I've earned the right to watch back. Lucia studied me for a long moment, and I saw the calculation happening. Loyalty to Dominic versus respect for my choice. Finally, she nodded. Marco stays with Emma. You come with me. But we stay in the car. We stay hidden. And if I say run, you run. Understood? Understood. And Claire? She pulled out her gun, checked it with efficient movements, holstered it again. After tonight, everything changes. You sure you want to see who Dominic really is? I thought about the man who'd kissed me like I was precious, who'd made rules to keep me safe, who'd looked at my honesty like it was something rare and breakable. Thought about the man who'd built an empire on fear, who had traitors in his organization, who was about to do something I couldn't take back or unsee. I'm sure, I said, because I already know who he is. All of him. Lucia smiled, sharp, approving, a little bit sad. Then let's go watch a reckoning. The warehouse district looked different at night, all shadows and sodium lights turning everything the color of old bruises. Lucia drove us to a building 3 blocks from where Dominic was meeting Vincent, parked in an alley with a clear sightline to the main entrance. She handed me binoculars without a word. He'll kill me for bringing you, she said quietly. Then we won't tell him. Through the binoculars, I watched men arrive. Dominic's people first, Marco and 2 others I recognized from the restaurant, moving with the purposeful economy of soldiers. They positioned themselves at exits, checked perimeters, spoke into earpieces with clipped efficiency. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. Then Dominic arrived, black car, tinted windows, and when he stepped out, I barely recognized him. Not because he looked different, but because he moved different. Fluid, predatory, every gesture stripped of the careful control I'd seen in his office. This was who he became when the mask came off. This was the man his enemies feared. Vincent showed up 20 minutes later. Alone, which seemed stupid until I realized it was strategy. He wanted to look vulnerable, wanted Dominic to underestimate him. But I'd seen that calculation before, in coffee shops and bedrooms, and every time he'd convinced me his jealousy was love. They met in the center of the empty warehouse floor, 2 men circling each other like wolves. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read their body language. Vincent, loose and confident, hands in his pockets. Dominic, coiled tension, every muscle ready for violence. What are they saying? I asked Lucia. She had an earpiece in, listening to the feed from Marco's wire. Vincent's offering a deal. He gives up the traitor in Dominic's organization, walks away clean, and you never hear from him again. My stomach twisted. And Dominic is telling him to go to hell. I watched through the binoculars as Vincent's smile faltered. Watched him pull something from his jacket. Not a weapon, a phone. He held it up, showed Dominic the screen, and even from 3 blocks away, I saw Dominic's whole body go rigid. What is it? I demanded. Lucia's face had gone pale. Video. Of Emma's school. Time-stamped from 20 minutes ago. The world tilted. Emma was supposed to be safe. Marco was supposed to be with her. But Vincent had played us again, anticipated every move, positioned his pieces while we were busy watching him. I was out of the car before Lucia could stop me. Claire, no, but I was already running, my feet pounding pavement, my lungs burning with cold air and terror. 3 blocks felt like 3 miles. I burst through the warehouse door and every head turned. Dominic's men reaching for weapons. Vincent's smile widening into something triumphant, and Dominic's face going through a progression of emotions too fast to name before landing on fury. "Claire, get out," he said, his voice deadly calm. "He has Emma." The words came out broken. Or he knows where she is, or she's fine. Dominic cut me off. Marco called 30 seconds ago. False alarm. Vincent was bluffing. I stopped. Looked at Vincent, who was laughing now, genuinely amused, like this was all a game he was winning. "She came running," he said to Dominic. "After everything, she still cares more about her sister than her own safety. That's the difference between you and me, Moretti. I knew exactly what she'd do." "You're still figuring it out. You used her." Dominic's voice was ice. "For 3 years. Set her up, manipulated her, made her believe you loved her, all to get to me. And it worked." Vincent spread his hands. "Here we are." I stood there between them, understanding finally why Dominic had wanted me to stay away. Because this wasn't about justice or protection. This was about 2 men who'd been circling each other for years, and I was just the excuse they'd both been waiting for. "Tell him," Vincent said to me. "Tell him how good we were together. How you believed every word. How you would have done anything for me." "I was young," I said quietly. "And lonely. And you were patient. That's not love. That's predation." Something flickered in Vincent's eyes. Not shame, but irritation. Like I'd broken character in his script. "You think he's different?" Vincent gestured at Dominic. "He's using you too. Protection, safety, all those pretty promises. But when this is over, you'll just be another problem he has to manage." "No," I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected. "He gave me choices. You never did." Dominic moved then, stepped between me and Vincent like a wall made of flesh and fury, and his hand found mine. Brief, warm, real. "Lucia," he said without looking away from Vincent. "Take her home. Dominic, now." But before Lucia could reach me, Vincent moved. Fast, fluid, and suddenly there was a gun in his hand, not pointed at Dominic, pointed at me. The click of the safety coming off echoed in the cavernous space. "Here's my new deal," Vincent said. "You let me walk out of here, or I put a bullet in the one thing you actually care about." Time slowed. I saw Dominic's men shifting positions, saw Lucia's hand moving toward her weapon, saw Dominic's face cycle through calculations, and I understood with perfect clarity that Vincent was going to die tonight. The only question was whether I died with him. "Vincent," I said carefully, "this doesn't end the way you think it does." "Sure it does. He keeps his gun trained on me. I walk. You live. Everyone gets what they want. Except you already lost," I continued. "Because the video you showed Dominic, the proof you've been watching Emma, that's evidence. And the FBI is already building a case against you for the money laundering. Dominic gave them everything 3 days ago. It was a bluff. A desperate gamble based on nothing except the way Dominic had said I'm handling it and the careful way he'd promised to end this right. But Vincent's face told me I'd guessed correctly. You're lying." "Am I? Check your accounts. Check your safe houses. Check the people you think are loyal. Dominic didn't need to touch you. He just needed to show the FBI where to look." Vincent's hand wavered. Just slightly. Just enough. And Dominic moved. What happened next took 3 seconds but felt like forever. Dominic closed the distance between them, knocked the gun away with one hand while the other caught Vincent's throat. They went down hard, Vincent fighting like a cornered animal, Dominic methodical and relentless. I heard bones crack, heard Vincent's gasping breaths turn wet and desperate. "Stop," I heard myself say. "Dominic, stop." He looked up at me, and his eyes were empty. Not cruel, just void of everything except purpose. This was who he became when someone threatened what was his. "He'll do it again," Dominic said. "The moment I let him go, he'll find another way to hurt you." "I know." I moved closer, knelt down so I was at his level. "But if you kill him, you become exactly what he said you are. Just another man making my choices for me." The words hung there. Dominic's hand was still on Vincent's throat, could end it with one squeeze. Vincent's eyes were bulging, terrified, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction at his fear. "What do you want me to do?" Dominic asked quietly. "Let the FBI have him. Let him rot in prison knowing he lost. Let him live with the fact that I walked away and chose someone else." Dominic held my gaze for a long moment, then released Vincent, who collapsed gasping. Two of Dominic's men moved in immediately, zip-tying his hands, calling someone, police, FBI. I didn't know and didn't care. Dominic stood, pulled me up with him, and I saw his hands were shaking. "You shouldn't have come," he said. "I know. You could have been killed. I know that too." He pulled me into his chest then, held me so tight I could barely breathe, and I felt his heart hammering against my cheek. "I can't do this," he whispered into my hair. "Can't care about you and keep you safe. They're mutually exclusive. Then stop trying to keep me safe." I pulled back enough to look at him. "Just keep me with you. Let me choose the danger instead of hiding from it." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Lucia appeared at my elbow, and I saw approval in her eyes. Or maybe just relief. Vincent was being dragged away, still gasping, and as he passed us, he spat blood and said one last thing. "This isn't over." Dominic didn't respond, just watched him go with that empty expression, and I wondered what it cost him to choose my way instead of his instincts. Later, in the car, Lucia drove us back to Newton while I sat in the back seat with Dominic's arm around me. He was silent, processing, and I let him be. When we pulled up to the safe house, Emma was on the porch with Marco, and when she saw me, she ran. I held my sister while she cried, and over her shoulder I met Dominic's eyes. He nodded once. Acknowledgement, respect, maybe promise. Then he was gone. Back into his car, and I understood that tonight had changed everything. Tomorrow the FBI would have questions. Tomorrow I'd have to decide what came next. But tonight, I'd watched the man I was falling for choose mercy when revenge would have been easier. That had to mean something. It had to. The FBI came at dawn. 2 agents in dark suits who sat at the Newton kitchen table drinking coffee Lucia made while I tried to keep my hands from shaking. Emma was still asleep upstairs, and I wanted to keep it that way. Wanted to shield her from this final piece of the nightmare we'd been living. "Ms. Mitchell," the older agent began, his voice professionally gentle. "We need your statement about Vincent Drake. Everything you know about his activities, your relationship, the threats." I told them. All of it. The surveillance, the package, the 3 years I'd spent thinking I was free when I was really just waiting for him to use me. They recorded every word, took notes, asked questions that made me feel like I was on trial instead of Vincent. "And Dominic Moretti?" the younger agent asked. "What's your relationship with him?" The question felt like a trap. He protected me. When Vincent threatened my sister, Dominic gave us a safe place. Out of the goodness of his heart? Does it matter? The agents exchanged glances, and I saw the calculation happening. They wanted Vincent, but they wanted Dominic more. Wanted me to give them something that would connect the 2 cases, turn protection into conspiracy. "Are you here by choice, Ms. Mitchell? Or did Mr. Moretti coerce you in any way?" I thought about rules and promises and the way Dominic's hand had shaken when he pulled me close last night. Thought about the gun pointed at my chest and the choice he'd made. Mercy over revenge, my voice over his instincts. "I'm here by choice," I said firmly. "Everything I've done has been my choice." They didn't believe me. I could see it in their faces, the way they looked at me like I was another victim too damaged to see clearly. It made me furious. This assumption that being protected meant being owned, that accepting help meant surrendering agency. After they left, I sat in the kitchen watching sunrise paint the walls gold and made a decision. I was done being a chess piece. Done letting men, Vincent, Dominic, even well-meaning FBI agents, decide what my story meant. I called Dominic. He answered on the first ring, voice rough with exhaustion. "Are you okay?" I lied to the FBI. The words came out steadier than I felt. Told them I don't know anything about your business, that you're just a good Samaritan who helped a stranger. Silence. Then, "You shouldn't have done that." "I know." I watched clouds move across the Newton sky. But I'm done being the victim in everyone else's story. Vincent used me. The FBI wants to use me. I won't let you be collateral damage in my rescue. Claire. My name in his mouth still made something flutter in my chest. This makes you complicit. If they find out you withheld information, then I deal with it. I stood, paced the kitchen. Where are you? Cleaning up. Handling things. The vagueness was deliberate, and I hated it. Hated the distance he was putting between us again. The way protection kept looking like walls. I want to see you, I said. Not at a safe house. Not with Lucia watching. Just you and me. That's not safe. I don't care. Another pause. Longer this time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, raw, unguarded. Boston Common, 2 hours, southwest corner. The call ended. I left Emma a note, told Lucia I needed air, and walked out before anyone could stop me. The T was crowded with morning commuters, and I disappeared into the anonymity of bodies and subway tunnels, emerged into autumn sunlight that felt like absolution. Dominic was waiting on a bench near the pond, wearing jeans and a jacket that made him look almost ordinary. Almost. He stood when he saw me. And for a moment, we just looked at each other. Two people who'd been through war together, trying to figure out what peace looked like. You came alone, he said. So did you. I'm always alone, even in crowds. I sat beside him, and he didn't touch me, kept that careful distance between us like he was afraid of what might happen if we crossed it. Vincent's being arraigned today, he said. Federal charges. Money laundering, racketeering, blackmail. He'll spend the next 20 years in prison if his lawyers are lucky. And the traitor in your organization? Handled. The single word carried weight I didn't want to examine too closely. What happens now? I asked. You go back to your life. The courier service. Your apartment. I make sure no one bothers you again. That's it. After everything, you just let me go. He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my breath catch. Not coldness, not distance, devastation. You deserve normal, Claire. You deserve someone who doesn't come with bodies in their wake, who doesn't have enemies circling, who can give you the life you wanted before I ruined it. You didn't ruin anything. I turned to face him fully. Vincent did, and you helped me survive it. For now, but how long before the next threat? The next enemy who thinks you're leverage? His hands clenched. I can't protect you from my world without keeping you in a cage. Then don't protect me. I reached for his hand, felt him flinch but not pull away. Let me stand next to you instead. Let me choose this, knowing exactly what it means. You don't know what you're asking. Yes, I said. I do. He stood then, pulled away, and I watched him wrestle with something I couldn't see, some internal battle between what he wanted and what he thought I deserved. I need time, he finally said, to handle things properly. To make sure when you're with me, it's because you want to be, not because you're trapped. How much time? However long it takes. It felt like an ending, like goodbye dressed up as protection. And maybe it was. Maybe this was his way of loving me, letting me go before I got hurt worse. But as he walked away through fallen leaves and morning light, I made a choice. Not to wait. Not to let him decide this for us. I would give him his time, his space to clean up whatever needed cleaning, but then I would come back, and I would make him see that I'd chosen this, chosen him, with my eyes wide open. I just hoped he'd still be there when I did. 3 weeks passed, like held breath. I went back to work. Back to my apartment where the heat still didn't work and my neighbor's guitar bled through the walls. Back to delivering packages and eating dinner over the sink and all the small rituals of a life I'd once thought was mine. But everything felt different now, like I was wearing someone else's clothes, playing a part I'd outgrown. Emma moved back in with me. The FBI had cleared us, Vincent was awaiting trial, and slowly the world stopped feeling like it might explode at any moment. She caught me staring at my phone sometimes, waiting for texts that didn't come, and she never asked questions. Just squeezed my hand and went back to her calculus. I didn't hear from Dominic. Not once. Lucia texted occasionally, brief check-ins that felt more like surveillance than friendship. You good? Need anything? I always said no. Always lied. Then, on a gray November morning, my supervisor called me into his office. Said a client had requested me specifically for a delivery. High priority, Needed today. I knew before he gave me the address. Beacon Street, the penthouse. Full circle. My hands shook the entire elevator ride up. The doors opened onto that private hallway, that glossy black door, and I stood there for a long moment before knocking, wondering if he'd even answer, wondering what I'd say if he did. The door opened. Dominic stood there in jeans and a gray sweater, looking tired and real and so achingly familiar. My chest hurt. "Package for signature," I said, my voice breaking on the last word. He almost smiled. "Almost? Come in, Claire." The penthouse looked the same, glass and marble and that view of Boston that made you feel like you owned the world. But the table where the money had spilled was gone, replaced by bookshelves, changes, small ones. Like he was trying to be someone different too. "You asked for me specifically?" I said. "I did. Why?" He moved to the window, hands in his pockets, and I remembered this posture, the way he retreated into distance when things got too close. Because 3 weeks ago I made a promise, to give you time, to clean things up so you could choose freely. He turned. I kept that promise. And Vincent's trial starts next month. My organization is restructured. The people who betrayed me are gone. The threats are contained. His eyes found mine. "You're safe now. Completely. You can go back to your life without looking over your shoulder." The words should have been relief. Freedom. Instead, they felt like goodbye. "So this is you letting me go," I said quietly. "This is me giving you the choice I should have given you from the start." I set down my courier bag, walked toward him slowly, deliberately, until I was close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the careful control he was holding on to. "You're an idiot," I said. "Probably. I didn't survive Vincent to play it safe, Dominic. I didn't watch you choose mercy over revenge so you could push me away for my own good. Claire. No. My turn." I reached up, touched his face, felt him lean into my hand like he'd been starving for it. "You gave me 3 weeks to figure out what I want. I know. I want the truth over safety. I want to stand next to someone who sees all of me and doesn't flinch. I want you. All of you. The good parts and the dangerous parts and everything in between." His hand covered mine, pressed it harder against his cheek. "I can't promise you normal. I never asked for normal. I can't promise there won't be more threats, more danger. I know what I'm choosing." I stepped closer. "Do you—" He pulled me against him then, not gentle, not controlled, just desperate and real. Kissed me like he'd been holding his breath for 3 weeks and I was oxygen. I kissed him back with everything I couldn't say, and when we finally pulled apart, we were both shaking. "Stay," he whispered. "Not because you're scared, not because I'm protecting you. Just stay." I looked out at Boston sprawling beneath us, at the life I'd built and the one I was choosing, and I understood finally what freedom meant. Not safety, not independence, but the courage to choose love knowing exactly what it costs. "Okay," I said. "I'll stay." His smile was small and real and entirely mine. Outside, the city hummed with ordinary lives, ordinary choices. But up here in the penthouse where it all began, 2 people who'd survived their worst nightmares learned how to be honest together. And that felt like everything. If you made it to the end of this story, let us know in the comments which city you're watching from, and click the yellow bell to subscribe to the channel and support us. Keep the adventure going by clicking on the suggested video on your screen.